What's up, guys? I'm taking you on my journey to victory against some buddies at a local lake in Los Angeles County. I'm gonna break down how I find fish on the day of a derby when I haven't had the best practice in the world or no practice at all, and explain why looking for bait during the fall is crucial. Alright, let's do this. So, at the start of the day, I tried scoping out bait fish in open water where I previously found them on other trips to this lake. So, I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see. The bait was spread out and the schools of fish never seemed to appear. After that, I decided to try picking off a few solo fish that were roaming to calm my nerves and kind of settle in the day. With little to no success while midstrolling these solo roamers, I decided to go shallow. Now, fishing shallow is super important because during the fall, some bass may push up shallow to feed. My favorite way to cover water in the shallows is with a squarebill. This technique works well in sparse grass or hard structure. I don't really use livescope to target fish in the shallows while I'm using a squarebill, but to find the best casting lanes to ensure my squarebill hits the bottom. I didn't get any bites during the stretch, so I decided to check out other patterns. I kept in mind how much the water had dropped, meaning less cover for bass to set up on. So I wanted to scan the area one more time because fish tends to take time to set up on bait depending on the time of day. But I soon gave up on that pattern again and checked out some offshore spots that had rock and hard cover. I came across a rock pile with fish on it, but again, I didn't like what I saw. These fish were surrounded by bait, but clearly weren't in the mood to eat. They were so pressured. I threw jigs, drop shot, deep cranking, and all of them didn't work. Well, there was a dock nearby, so I gave that a shot, and it had good track record. Docks often have a great ecosystem, which makes them a good habitat for large mouth bass. I saw tons of bait, so I tried a flutter spoon to reach them, as the fish were tucked up underneath these docks a good 15 to 20 feet, out of reach for most baits. I couldn't get those fish to bite, so I left the spot and crossed the lake to a cove where bait tends to gather. In the cove, I wanted to get a quick bite and, establish that there's active fish, to see if there's an active fish in this cove, or active fish in this cove. So during tournaments, I prefer to target actively feeding fish rather than trying to trigger a lethargic or moody one throughout the day. When I reached the cove, I aimed for high percentage spots with my drop shot and covered as much water as possible with a squarebill to kind of eliminate zones. I didn't get touched, so I moved on quickly. Again, I'm moving on quickly so I can find fish that are actively feeding on bait. Next, I decided to hit another high percentage spot where bait fish tend to gather. This spot had a ledge that started from the bank and dropped down to roughly around 22 feet. In the same area, there were also boulder-shaped structure on the bottom, perfect for dragging a worm if need be. On the way there, I was able to get my first bite next to that boulder after several casts with a drop shot.
is number one. They're stubborn today, that's for sure. All right, number one, guys. Took a while. That midstrolling bite ain't the deal right now.
There were bait fish around the boulder, but I didn't see obvious signs of bass. However, I still gave it a shot, knowing that sometimes bass hug the bottom and aren't easily visible. I got my first bite on a drop shot, but it wasn't enough to convince me that this was the pattern that I needed to do all day. I wanted to find a small stretch where I could spend hours culling fish rather than casting solo fish on structure. Right next to the boulder, I hit the jackpot. I knew this ledge from previous trips. It could hold massive schools of bait. This is where time on the water pays off. As anglers, we need to develop techniques to find bait fish faster if we want to stay competitive. One technique I use to find bait quickly on a kayak is to leave the FFS, aka livescope transducer, in one direction while zigzagging at maximum speed to locate huge bait balls. When you come across bait balls the size of cars that are tightly packed, it means that they're using a defense tactic against predators like largemouth bass. I knew if I could find these large bait balls, largemouth bass would be in the area. Soon enough, I found what I was looking for. When I first arrived, many of the bass chasing these bait balls were high in the water column. My go-to bait are usually a 4-inch fluke style bait like a freeloader by Rapala Crush City, or a 2.8-inch minnow like a Kitech, both on a 1/8 or 3/16 ounce ball head jig.
Two, guys. All right, let's get more. I knew it. They're gonna be active somewhere. This is a better one too. But Eme, come here. Yes! Yes, baby, yes. Freaking smoked it. Smoked it. Freaking smoked it. And a half, baby. All right, let's do this, baby. Let's do it.
I use a 2.8-inch Kitech when the bass can be easily triggered with subtle twitches, and I switch to the 4-inch freeloader when I need to trigger the smarter ones, which often requires more aggressive twitches, similar to a hard jerkbait. As time went on, I had figured out how to target the larger schools of bass that were pinning shad to the bottom. This is where listening to Damian Thao on several podcasts paid off. Anything 20 feet or deeper, I consider using a jigging spoon. A heavy jigging spoon gets down to the fish quickly and can trigger an entire school of bass to fire up. Every time I saw a school of bass pinning or swimming deep near bait in 20 plus feet of water, I switched to a 6 cents jigging spoon. I let that sucker hit the bottom, jig it up 1 to 2 feet off the bottom, and let it fall back down. Yeah, I got several key keepers to commit and ended up making multiple pulls.
14. Number 5. There we go. All right, let's check the leaderboard. 72 inches, leading. Christopher has 2 fish. Mike is in second with a 17 incher and 44 inches overall. Jonathan and Adrian is probably sandbagging. But we're gonna continue to fish and have some fun. Oh, got on. Yep. This is my coal.
Good one, bro. About a 16?
Maybe 15. And this one's for you, Brad. This one's for you. I'm taking one thing at a time, man. I learned the Damian Thao way for the jigging spoon. Now it's been a good day. Oh, got one. Got one, you hear that? 12 incher. Hey, thanks for giving me the life jacket, man. I appreciate it.
No problem, bro. No problem.
That was small.
Yeah.
11 3/4. Huh?
Throw it back, no good.
No, I cooled up to 14 and 14 and a half. I made a coal. Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
You know, most anglers struggled and didn't catch a limit. This is where it pays off all those hours on the water, learning how to target both suspended and bottom feeding bass. The faster you can be on the water with these techniques, the closer you'll get to victory on these tournament days.